The human value is shifting. These traits that society used to label as too sensitive, too intense, those are the traits that these companies are going to pay top dollar for. They want the people who sense what's coming before it arrives. And the people who find themselves drawn to discussions just like this one we're having tend to be those exact individuals. Because PsyTech is not rare, it's just under-trained. Because the more AI advances, the more human we have to become. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Rooted Frequency. Thank you so much for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you being here. I'm your host, Tiffany Haney. Last week, we talked about technology in our heads, PsyTech, and Clif High. In case you missed part one, I'll give you just enough context to jump in with us today. Clif High is a researcher, linguist, and futurist whose experiments in predictive linguistics mapped subtle changes in human language and collective emotional currents. And this was all digitally, all online. And these predictions were feeling into the pulse of humanity, is the best way that I can describe it. And they weren't fortune-telling in the sense of saying that certain events were for sure going to happen, but more so reflections of the subconscious data that's pulsing through humanity before the events even unfold. So today, in part two, we're going deeper into psychic frequency, the event stream, psychic technology, and the future of human consciousness. Let's start with talking a little bit about psychic frequency, because when I say that word, I don't want you to think about anything mystical. I'm talking about a real sensory layer of human consciousness that most people feel every single day, but don't acknowledge. Even if we don't have a language for it or we teach this skill, it's just like touch, taste, smell. And psychic frequency is the part of your awareness that picks up on subtle shifts. The shift in someone's energy before they speak, the feeling of something is about to happen, but you're not quite sure what, the knowing that you can't trace back to logic, and patterns that you sense before you can even prove them. We've been conditioned to treat those moments like coincidences, synchronicities, or even glitches. But they're not glitches. They are features of the human operating system. And Clif High talks about this a lot, how humans come preloaded with intuitive perception. It's built into the way our nervous system interacts with shared reality. Kids feel it immediately. Animals respond to it. Indigenous cultures have worked with it for thousands of years. And Clif believes, and I agree, that the newer generations of kids coming in now have this bandwidth about them from day one. They're not scattered or too sensitive. They're tuned. They're reading the world on a layer that most adults have forgotten how to access. Psychic frequency isn't magic that's only given to certain people. We all have it. It's awareness in its natural setting. And once you start paying attention to it, the whole landscape of reality becomes more vivid, more responsive, more alive. I always say psychic abilities and intuition are built in, but you do have to give them a little workout. Work on refining these skills, should you want to use them. But how does this work with event stream? Again, we introduced this last episode, but one of Clif High's most important ideas is this event stream. And that is that stream that he is mapping of the collective unconscious. He says that event stream isn't the future. It's not fate. It's not prophecy. It's more like a river of potentialities. And all of these scenarios exist just before events congeal into physical reality. You can think of it like this. You know how a storm can be felt before clouds even show up, or people say it feels like it's going to rain? That's a pressure change. Maybe a subtle temperature shift, or even an electricity current in the air. Reality works the same way. Events have signatures. Everything is frequency. Events have emotional pressure. They have pattern momentum. And those patterns show up in the collective unconscious first. So the event stream is that pre-physical layer where emotional energy builds, where there's a timeline shift, where there's multiple probabilities, different archetypes activate, and humanity begins subtly preparing for whatever's coming. Whether we know it or not, we are tuned into this frequency. A big question is, can AI access this event stream then? Clif says that AI can't. And that's not because AI doesn't have the capability or because it doesn't have a consciousness or a subconscious. AI doesn't have emotional resonance, doesn't have a psyche. And the event stream is not information. It's not just data that it can pull. It's experience before it forms. Psychic texture, not data. Only humans can feel it. Which brings us to PsyTech. Clif uses this term, PsyTech, short for psychic technology. PsyTech is the skill set of navigating the event stream using the natural psychic mechanisms of the human organism. It's the future equivalent of reading and writing. From his perspective, it will be as normal as using a phone. PsyTech includes emotional forecasting, pattern recognition prior to the patterns existing, intuitive decision sequencing, energetic pulse tracking, sensing pressure waves in consciousness, remote emotional perception, spontaneous symbolic decoding, dream-based informational retrieval, and novelty detection, which we will go into in a bit. And here's the key to all of this. Clif insists that PsyTech is trainable, that you don't need some mystical lineage or special DNA. You don't even need enlightenment. Your psyche already knows how to do this. You just forgot how to listen. One of the most interesting things that he speaks about is how this is already being sought out by companies. That companies are screening for PsyTech potential. It shows that deep down, our systems already know where humanity is heading. Clif's been talking about this for nearly 20 years, that companies, especially the big ones, the ones with predictive models and way too much data, have been quietly screening for people with PsyTech potential. Not psychics on TikTok, but individuals whose minds naturally interface with the event stream level of reality, the intuitive architecture that sits underneath logic. And the way that Clif pieces this together is really solid. So let's unpack what he knows. Over the years, hundreds of job applicants have contacted Clif. People who are applying for jobs in tech, defense, finance, AI research. And they kept reaching out and saying, I took this aptitude test and something felt off. Not scary off, just not logical, not linear, not about IQ or personality. They described tests like predicting outcomes with missing data, interpreting strange symbolic sequences, and identifying patterns hidden inside noise. Also, choosing which image felt most correct. And you know what this reminded me of? The GATE program. If you're unaware of the GATE program and similarly gifted programs from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, there's a lot of things that are odd. And now at this point, a lot of millennials have been pointing out the weird testing that some people were subjected to, myself included. When I grew up in Alaska, I was also part of a GATE program. And basically, my parents were told that it was about my IQ to test creativity, abstract thinking, and verbal reasoning. So as I was reading the information that Clif High was saying companies were searching for, I feel like it makes sense that perhaps these things were what they were looking for in these gifted programs. Because they measured pattern recognition under ambiguity, kids who didn't need to necessarily have all of the steps to get the answer. They tested novelty response, kids who get excited when something unusual or inconsistent appeared. Symbolic fluency, so kids intuitively understanding metaphors, archetypes, or the big picture. Also kids who jumped between ideas effortlessly or too fast for many teachers, this high associative speed. Also emotional sensitivity, kids who could feel the mood of the room. These traits almost match perfectly with qualities companies now screen for: novelty detection, presentient reasoning, energetic perception, intuition spikes, dream activity, and nonlinear cognition. It's the same cluster of abilities, but decades earlier. So if PsyTech is the ability to sense or interpret this event stream, or the subtle data layer beneath reality, then intuitive, symbolically fluent, novelty-sensitive children would stand out immediately. And gifted programs didn't call this psychic potential, but neither do modern corporations. In these job listings, they often call it situational forecasting, nonlinear reasoning, and anticipatory cognition. Different label, same archetype. So was this purposeful? That's the real question. Of course, there are three possibilities. One being that it was accidental and the school simply selected kids with unusual cognition, and those kids happen to have PsyTech adjacent traits. I think we can probably dismiss this possibility. There's the possibility that it was partially intentional, that some educational psychologists may have known that high intuition and high patterning kids were different, even if they didn't use psychic language. Or that it was absolutely intentional, because at the same time GATE was rolling out, the government was actively researching remote viewing. We know, per government files that have since been released to the public, that the and other government organizations were actively researching remote viewing, anomalous cognition, intuition-driven intelligence gathering, presentient threat detection, and literally psychic espionage. These programs all overlapped in the same time period. If you've made it this far into the episode, please make sure that you are subscribed and that you like the episode. Maybe even leave me a little comment, because that helps so much. So if intelligence agencies were studying psychic ability formally, isn't it reasonable that schools might be used to broadly identify early talent? It's not far-fetched when you look back at that era and what was happening. Because now we know that many adults, like myself, who realize we were in these gate programs as kids are many of the same people waking up to intuitive abilities now. Empaths, sensitives, pattern seers, and people who felt ahead of the room. People who felt like they were wired differently. Which of course brings us back to this whole thing that technology is already inside of us. Some programs may have recognized it early, and some corporations recognize it now. So obviously, as AI develops and gets more and more helpful and takes jobs, the next chapter has to be us consciously developing this PsyTech ourselves. This is the future of humanity and what we will be able to do for work here. People worry about AI taking away jobs. This is the next stage. And Clif High recognized this because of his experience in programming, linguistics, and pattern modeling. So he saw what these companies and what these tests were probing for. They were measuring pre-sentient awareness, the mind's ability to jump ahead of logic and feel where the pattern is going. Of course, companies disguise these tests as creativity exercises or abstract reasoning challenges. But Cliff has said many times that their actual purpose is to flag people with advanced intuitive bandwidth. He says that insiders have confirmed it with him privately. These people, including defense contractors, cybersecurity analysts, HR testers, intel people, and corporate recruitment designers. He claims that they all are saying, yes, we look for this. We just don't call it psychic. They call it something neutral and boring, right? Otherwise, people would take notice of this and it probably wouldn't get the job posting past illegal. We see so much support of this. So many government programs openly research anomalous cognition. And it's not even fringe. If you look at declassified remote viewing documents, DARPA's cognitive modeling programs, In-Q-Tel's investments, psychological operations research, and military intuition studies, we see that the government has been extremely interested in intuitive cognition for decades. And Cliff believes that corporations have followed suit because companies always chase whatever the intelligence agencies do. These recruiters are never going to say that they want intuitive or psychic people. Well, maybe one day. At least not now, they won't. They're going to say that they want situational forecasters, nonlinear reasoners, rapid pattern detectors, novelty processors, and anticipatory cognition specialists. But the behaviors, the traits, the tests, all point to the same thing. They are trying to locate human beings who naturally interface with the deep layers of the event stream. So what specifically are these things that Clif High claims these companies are seeking out? These qualities that are fingerprints of PsyTech ability. High novelty sensitivity is the ability to notice tiny shifts before anyone else does. So you may feel like you can sense when the vibe in the room changes. When someone is lying, you sense it. When something seems to be a trend amongst humanity, not clothing-wise, but, you're starting to sense emotional trends shifting. Your system catches it early. They're also looking at pattern recognition with missing pieces. So these are people who their mind doesn't need full information to see where things are heading. You leap intuitively. You extrapolate. You feel the shape of the answer before logic kicks in. And our brains do this anyway. We know that. When you've ever seen those social media posts where they take out a bunch of letters and for some reason you can read it, well, your brain is filling in the missing pieces. We do the same thing visually. They're also looking for symbolic fluency, where you understand images, metaphors, archetypes, energy, tone. Basically, you comprehend this communication that is happening beneath the surface. And that's one of the biggest markers. I think that this is really obvious in kids when we say that they seem to just get it. It's like they are understanding what is happening beneath the surface without cognitively understanding the words or the reasoning behind why they get it. It's also presentient reasoning, which is Clif's phrase for the ability to sense outcomes before the rational mind builds its narrative, meaning the things that you know, but you don't know why you know. There's also emotional resonance intelligence. Empaths. Feeling the mood of people, groups, movements, or even global energies. And it's so funny because you think back to when we were kids or years ago, and people didn't talk about being empaths. You'd hear it maybe a little bit, like back when I was in college, sometimes I would say, I think I'm an empath. And it was like this big revelation because no one talked about it. And now it seems like everyone is, to some degree, because it is a built-in skill. Some of us simply noticed this happening within ourselves early on, and by calling attention to it, we sort of nurture it and it grows. Another thing they're looking for are people with strong dream activity or lucid awareness. So not daydreaming, but active subconscious processing happening while you're dreaming, while you're plugged in. Also, spontaneous intuition spikes. These moments where a fully formed answer just drops in. Downloads. And rapid energetic perception, where you're able to read spaces, timelines, situations, and your nervous system is a sensor array. Companies want these people because intuitive cognition outperforms raw logic when we are looking at crises response, when we want to be innovative, to help us with forecasting, for creative problem solving, for threat detection, and also high-pressure decision-making. They're trying to future-proof their companies, their teams, by locating humans who operate at the intersection of instinct, intuition, and deep pattern awareness. These traits that society used to label as too sensitive, too intense, or an overthinker, those are the traits that these companies are going to pay top dollar for. They want the people who sense what's coming before it arrives. And the people who follow work of people like Clif or find themselves drawn to discussions just like this one we're having tend to be those exact individuals. Because PsyTech is not rare, it's just under-trained. So how do we access this event stream ourselves? How can you work on these traits to access it? How can you tune your psychic frequency to this purpose? How do you cultivate PsyTech as a trained human skill? Well, let's talk about some of the core exercises that Clif's work points towards. First, the dream retrieval practice. You see, dreams sit closest to the event stream. When we look at accessing, basically we're accessing another dimensional frequency, right? And the dream realm is closer to this event stream. So for this, you would practice every morning before you even move, grabbing a dream journal or even your phone and pulling out your notes app. And before your conscious mind even boots up, sit there for a few minutes and say, what did my subconscious notice last night? And I always tell people they don't have to write these long logs. You can just look for a narrative. Was there an emotion that was prevalent amongst your dreams? Was there symbols? Was there a theme that seemed to resonate upon waking? This trains your psyche to keep a line open at night. Another exercise would be the event pressure scan. So for this, once a day, you could try to do it preferably around the same time. You would pause and ask, is there emotional pressure building anywhere in my life or in the collective? Now, this is not fear. This is not anxiety. This is pressure. This is something I have worked with my mentorship groups, with my mentees on, where we feel energy. Where is there an energetic buildup happening? Can you sense it not only within your body, but can you sense it in the world? This is attuning our awareness to subtle energy currents. So then there's also novelty that we've said several times. And when Clif talks about novelty, he's pointing to the micro disruptions in your field. These little ripples before the wave breaks. This little notion, something's different here, something's off. And most people ignore it because it's too small to matter. But in predictive linguistics and PsyTech work, these tiny deviations are the breadcrumbs that lead to the larger pattern. Novelty is anything that does not belong to your usual landscape. It's not dramatic. It's not mystical. It's the subtle blip in your personal reality feed. And the blips are the exact places where the new information is trying to surface. So by training yourself in novelty, doing these novelty radar exercises, you're training your nervous system to become a high-resolution sensor. Most people live in a trance of familiarity. Same thoughts, same loops, same emotional weather, and novelty slips past them because they're not tuned to catch it. But the event stream, the subconscious ocean of future-leaning data, doesn't announce itself with a megaphone. It whispers. These patterns first show up as tiny anomalies. And there's some fun ways to work on novelty. And I think that this is where it's very important because novelty is the doorway to the stream. It's going to mark the boundary between your known world and the incoming data that you're trying to integrate. The event stream always arrives through this path of least resistance, and novelty creates like a fresh snow where new footprints appear. And our psyche tags certain moments with extra charge because those moments connect to an emerging theme, a future unfolding, a collective pattern brewing, or even a personal timeline shift. Your job is to notice the charge. That's it. Once you start noticing novelty consistently, you'll see it as cluster. And that's when you start reading the drift. That's when intuition becomes directional instead of random. And that's when you begin accessing the stream on purpose. If you are interested in being a part of this roundtable discussion on Zoom, live, on Sunday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, go visit patreon.com/rootedfrequency and check out the membership options. If you're tier 2 or higher, you can jump on monthly Zoom calls, mystery schools that we're really going into the real life skills and the real life exercises that you can utilize to further yourself on this path. PsyTech is the future. And children are being born into this world pre-wired. If we look at these generations, they're feeling things very intensely. They learn more symbolically. They're even communicating symbolically with more and more emojis, shortened sentences. There's many reports that these children have higher intuitive burst patterns, they absorb information linearly, and they navigate emotional fields with adult-level precision. They're not here to fit in with this old world. They're here to navigate the new one. So as AI keeps swallowing up the mechanical parts of life, organizing, sorting, calculating, optimizing, the human value is shifting. The future isn't asking us to keep up with the machines. It's evolving us to a new utilization. It's asking us to remember who we actually are beneath all of this noise. The more AI advances, the more human we have to become. Not polite humans, not performative humans, actual human. The kind that listens, senses, anticipates, utilizes intuition in everything that we do. The kind built to read energetic weather the way satellites read storms. We're moving into this world where AI can do almost anything, except the one thing it has no doorway into: the living, electric, non-linear awareness running through our biology. These things remain uniquely ours. And we have to start honoring these senses, these things that make us human, in order to thrive in this new world that is coming upon us very fast. Our intuition, our foresight, our emotional understanding, our psychic perception, our creative spontaneity, these things are uniquely ours. And this leads us to the future, where we are going to be utilizing these things for event stream navigation. AI can only scrape the data. Humans can feel the future, can feel into this data and interpret it in ways that AI simply can't. The event stream is not an algorithm. It's a current in consciousness. And only a biological, lived nervous system can surf it. These traits are not woo-woo. They're the next competitive edge in a world where traditional skills are being absorbed by automation. This is why companies are screening for PsyTech potential. Not because they want a psychic on payroll, but because they need the kinds of minds who can see around corners in a landscape that's changing faster than code can even keep up with. This is why the children are coming with the traits switched on already. They're not sensitive. They're early prototypes of the next phase of human cognition. PsyTech is the bridge, the integration point between biological intelligence and artificial intelligence. The part of us that tech cannot replicate, imitate, or quantify yet. As AI becomes our infrastructure, PsyTech becomes our identity, our power, our survival skill, our contribution to the new world that we're stepping into. The future isn't AI replacing humans. It's AI handling the busy work so that humans can finally operate from the part of ourselves that we were always meant to use. PsyTech is the next frontier, and we're already walking it. All right, my loves, that was an awesome conversation and a very important ongoing one. For those who want to actually train a little bit more in these abilities, on December 14th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we are holding a Patreon Roundtable Mystery School via live Zoom, where we go into how to identify your psychic signature, how to open the channels that have been dormant, how to strengthen intuitive cognition, how to work directly with the event stream, and how to apply Clif High's insights to your own life. We will practice these exercises together, break down what these traits mean for you with your work and companies, what they're going to be looking for, how you can make yourself useful. Important stuff. So if you've ever felt like your intuition is trying to wake up, this is your invitation. Join Patreon, Tier 2 or higher, so that you can join us for the Mystery School session on the 14th. It's going to be a potent, experiential, and deeply activating session. And this month I'm offering a discount to your Patreon memberships, 11% off if you use the code 2026SAVE11. I also do have a free tier on there if you want to go join, because right now you're not ready to join a paying tier. I do post free content, additional content for the free tier, and at least you'll be up to date on anything that is happening should you want to join at a future date. More info and links are in the show notes, and thank you again for listening. I am so honored that you are here. Again, leave me a little comment and let me know what you think about this being our future as humans. I love you, and I'll see you in the next transmission. Bye. Everything is connected. Energy, science, quantum physics. This beautiful practice of being rooted in the frequency of love, light, and unity. We are inviting the collective consciousness to awaken and ascend.